Hello, good evening, everyone, again from India, and good morning to our guests from USA. So, today's session is called What Do Applicants Do Differently? And the keyword here really is differently because the students who get into the strong fit competitive universities are not always the ones who are doing the most things. They're the ones whose applications feel rather more clear, consistent, and much more intentional. And we're framing this as a parent student admissions playbook for a very specific reason. College admissions work really best when the student really owns the story, the parent provides the structure and the support. So you really look at it from a very specific teamwork and how we as an organization consistently like to say that it almost takes a village to raise a kid. Now, when those roles are clear, the process becomes calmer, faster, and far more effective. What we do in this session is to really break down admissions into simple framework, largely five pillars, so you know where to focus. The strategy, the academics and testing, the activities, leadership, essays, validation. So as we go, I want you to keep one big idea in mind. Top applications feel like one person wrote them across every section. Same direction, same values, same story, just proven with different experiences. So before we start, here's a simple way to participate, right? So as we move through with each pillar, right, keep on thinking, what are we really doing well today? What is missing or what is unclear? And lastly, what's the next upgrade we can make in the next specific timeline that depends on which grade you're in? So, someone who's currently in grade 11, think across in the next 60 days, 90 days. If you're someone who's in 10, add in another 90 days to that number. Someone in ninth, add in another 90 days. Try to create a longer term, I'll say short to mid term kind of a plan while you're thinking across with the presentation. Right. But before we move into the real aspect of our conversation today, just a quick reminder of, the people conducting the presentation today. Let's Unbound, the organization which we started across with the focus on skill building, empowering elementary and middle school students with STEM, life skills, and mentorship. When these students progressed to high school, they started seeking out college admissions. So we evolved our services to seamlessly integrate the storytelling through applications into our already well-established mentoring programs. So by combining personalized learning, skill development, and now as strategic admission support, we guide students right from their early academic years to top global university applications. Today, we have impacted more than 4,000 students across 25 countries, delivering more than a lakh 25,000 hours of expert mentoring. Our commitment to excellence has earned us a 4.9 over a 5 global rating. Now, a quick introduction over the founders behind the organization. Amol on your left, he's a serial entrepreneur, he's an education visionary with experiences with Tata and Exceed, which is India's largest school edtech platform. Amol has helped scale impactful educational solutions across 2,000 schools in 6 countries, impacting more than 250,000 students. Nishant on your right, he is the mentor, the educator, the brains behind many of the learning pathways that we share with our students with 14 plus years of experience across academia, across industry. He has counseled more than 1,000 students and has designed curriculum solutions right from K-12 to executive MBA programs. Now, I'm the other last co-founder with the organization and the presenter for today's webinar. I have my experiences across industries as automotive, banking, and within edtech as well with Crimson and added education. Right. Now, moving forward into today's session roadmap and really looking what all we would be discussing and really staying true to the topic, we'd be largely sticking around the today's conversation with common application USA, while giving you the various pillars that are there within common application first. I will also give a bit of information on the other platforms that also do exist within USA. So common application isn't the only one. You do also have a different platform that the UCs used, which is called the UC system. MIT runs their own. UT Austin do also have their own system. But while we'll be discussing, you'll see the pillars remain the same. And moving forward, the narrative, the components, the weightages, the big idea that I want to discuss from the lens of an admission officer, that all remains the same. Then we would move on to the real aspect of our conversation today. What are those pillars that we're going to be discussing across? And within those pillars, what is the contribution of the student, of the parent, creating this whole application? And eventually, we'll look at some common mistakes, and then we'll conclude, as we do with all our presentations, with the approach of ours and resources that we do share at the end of our every session. Right now, without further ado, let's move on to the topic and the presentation. But I just, sorry, forgot to share a couple of polls so I could understand the audience today as well. So, one of the first questions is to understand what are the grades of the students today participating. So, if you guys could just quickly vote, and I would have a better understanding of the grades. So it's a good spread right from your early high school years moving across to grade 10 and 11. Right. So moving on to the next poll. I just would like to also know what is the major that you guys are interested in. We're largely sticking towards USA, so not a question on which other country is interested, because we're going to be really sticking towards a single country, but would want to know what are the different kind of degrees students are interested. Really does give the value and an understanding what to focus across on the SAT section as well. Right. So just almost done with right now. The ones are normally in STEM, economics, finance, pure mathematics. Right. So now closing up the polls, we would start across with our presentation, and we'll start firstly with the topic of understanding what US admissions is all about. And one of the first things that one needs to understand the differentiator of the whole US application process vis-a-vis any other application or any other country per se is really from the factor of the major declaration. So USA firstly runs from the whole concept that it is not mandatory to declare your majors. You can apply without that specific declarations. Just a quick understanding of how does your undergrad education then look like. You start your degree with taking different electives, and you declare your major at the start of your sophomore year, which is your second year. But now coming back into our conversation, the application stage, so you would do realize that out of the 10 applications, for example, an admission officer is looking at, 3 to 5 would not have their major declared, which really puts the admission officer in the spot that the selection of the application is not purely dependent on the work that you're showcasing being related to the major you are studying, or for that example, also not mandatory that your core activities, the major things that you talk about, need to be connected to the major you are studying. You could be studying XYZ and showcasing an activity completely unrelated in ABC. Now comes the reason, and what you can see on the screen. They're looking for a well lopsided profile. They're looking for a personality. So if I can constantly change, what does that profile personality mean? If you're looking at Harvard, they're looking at a leadership. You're looking at Stanford, you're looking at for impact, innovativeness. MIT, even during your applications of STEM, would like this inclination towards social sciences. So, dependent on the profile or the university you're applying, that does change. What are you really targeting? What storyline you're creating? But the well lopsided, what does that mean? It means the letter T. And that's consistent across all application. What is this letter T? That you're showcasing some activities of interest. You're showing the place where you spend a maximum time on, which is going to be a very crucial part in our conversation today, that time aspect. But the aspect, those activities that you do a lot and do spend your maximum time across, is that vertical stroke of the letter T, along with the breadth that you can showcase with various different other activities. Participation in the sense that they don't really talk about just winning, but they really talk about a personality. So do not understand when I misunderstand when I say participation that you're not engaging enough. It only just means when I say participation that you're not coming across and saying that you're a world beater, or you have represented India on a certain level. You may be doing it on a smaller level. It has a greater impact over your personality. So it's going to become a part of this letter T. So you have to think of various different activities that may be connected to your major, may not be connected to your major, and it creates a profile personality that looks somewhere across to those universities that you'll be applying to. All of those universities having a different personality. Now we'll move over to the common application. Just do remember this one part, that the US application is major blind. They do not make decisions. The components do not change dependent on the major you would be studying. So with that thought, we'll just now move over to the components of common application, one of those platforms. And as I've said, there's UCs, there's UTs, there's MIT. So we will just be breaking that down as well while we're moving across. Right, that first column, academics, you could see that first aspect, SAT, ACT, the same two examinations that you'd be giving. A college can either be test blind, test aware, test optional. In all three criterias, it really doesn't matter which degree you're studying. You can select either of these two entrance exams, and your objective in submitting that entrance exam for the academics would be fulfilled. So you could again see here that is that again key factor coming across from the aspect that the declarations of majors are not mandatory. You can give either of these two, and it's the same thing that you'd be same exam that you're giving if you're studying humanities, if you're studying finance, economics, theoretical sciences, applied sciences. Now, moving across from that first component to the second one in the first pillar of academics, your predictive grade 12 score. So the year that you just start your 12th in is the year that you apply, the November of it. And at that stage, you do not have your grades. Even the regular decisions of the year of your graduation or the Jan of that year is the year that you'd be even putting in your regular decision application. So you realize you can only give your predictive grades, which also does, in turn makes your 9 to 11 grades more so important that, A, they're being submitted themselves. But if you realize your school will be giving those predictive grades on basis of your results from 9 till 11. So do remember within US applications, it is not to say that 10th is important and 12th is important. Every grade from 9th till 11 is extremely important, and even more so because that's the basis for your calculation for your predictive 12th grade. If you're from CBSE or ICSE, Indian boards, state boards, you need to give IELTS or TOEFL. Now, these are the major pillars which come across to which come in your academic pillar. A quick change over, let's say, for the UC system, you can just remove the SAT and AC because UC as an institute is is test blind, so you don't need to submit this. Otherwise, the rest remains the same. With MIT, with the other platforms, dependent on the college, if they're SAT blind, SAT aware, that SAT question may be there if you need it or not. If you rather ask me, if you're preparing for US applications, you're going to be applying for 12, 15 colleges. If you are from STEM, more often than not, do try to give the SAT exam. It's a grade 10, syllabus paper. It allows you a calculator. There is no negative marking in it. You get, various attempts as well to give this examination. So the best thing across is always to have the SAT exam ready in your bouquet of activities. Now, moving across to the activities themselves, the extracurriculars. So this is the section in Common App where you need to talk about 10 different things that you do. This is the real first place where you start to define your profile, your personality. When you talk about things in different areas, sports, music, which are largely non-academic activities, they're also academic activities. Once we go forward, we'll be discussing all of this in much more detail. The differentiation here in terms of the different systems is that UCs, you need to submit them in 20 you need to submit 20 different activities which are spread across specific four categories, right? Which is volunteering, work experience, academic programs, extracurriculars. And MIT would only be asking you for your top four activities. So, but then you actually go quite deep in them. They're 200 words each rather than the 150 character restriction of common application. The third pillar, your essays. So within common application, if you're applying to anywhere between 12, 15, 20 applications, the personal statement or the common app essay is that one document that will be going across to all of your different applications. Along with that, you then also have college specific essays. So those documents are largely used, the essay is largely used to take the narrative that you have started to build in your activities and have continued in the personal statement to match that personality traits to the university that you would be applying to. Then, in terms of that validation kind of documents, you start across with the letters of recommendation, two of them. And in these letters of recommendation, they're like largely those documents that go on to speak that same personality trait that you have spoken in your activities, in your personal statements, in your essays, and they're being validated by a teacher in their letters of recommendation. And another way of validation of your overall profile then rests in your last leg, which is the interviews. So now, if you see the whole, the whole set of five pillars, your academics is where you're talking about your grades. That those are the first minimum steps that you need to take. From there, they start to understand your narrative and the activities where you further describe it in the personality, in your personality on the personal statement. And then the college essays is matching it onto those institutes you're applying. Then starts the validation steps with the letters of recommendations and the interviews. Now, this is how you look at admissions from your perspective, turning it around and trying to look at it from the admissions officer side, trying to give you a view from the other side of the table. How does an admission officer look across at your overall application? So 40% is put across to your academics, right? So your SAT score, your ACT score, your predictive grade 12 scores, the transcripts from 9 till 11, the English proficiency test, all of that accounts for 40%. Right. The next 30% are those 10 activities or those 20 activities or those four activities in extreme detail in terms of MIT or 20 of UCs you would be describing have a weightage of 30%, which are again spread in academic, non-academic, both. Once we move across, we will be going in detail. What do I mean by an academic extracurricular? What do I mean by a non-academic extracurricular? But on the current stage, just to give you that understanding that all of these activities that you do from ninth till 11th, where you write the hours of the week, do you do it in weeks, a year, do you do it in 150 characters? They are 30% in terms of the overall application, almost equivalent to your SAT score plus your grade 12 predictives. Now, beyond that, the last 30%, it's on your common application itself, the personal statement, the essays, the letter of recommendations, and the interview, those two last validation steps. So, how you have represented well the extracurriculars in your personal statement and essays is the last 30% of this whole application. So, if you see in this sense, your largest part of this overall application are the things that you do beyond your school. But at the same time, you should also realize that your academics are important. It's almost like trying to understand a 10-step staircase, where the first four steps are your academics. It's not like your Indian applications or let's say your your Singapore applications where you've completed 90% of your steps just with the academics. In terms of your US applications, in a 10-step staircase, academics is just the first four. But definitely to reach the fifth step, you need to clear the first four. But once you have done that, you do have the next six steps in terms of the whole activities that you would be doing from grade 9, the strategy that you're creating, and continuation of those activities and strategy all the way up till your applications and representation of the same on the applications is the larger big steps of those six at the end. Now, while getting into the crux of our conversation today, right, which is really looking across what do your top your admits do differently. So this is now the first step. We have gone across looking at what are the applications, what is common applications, what's the slight differentiations between UCs, UTs, and with MIT as well. Now moving across overall, regardless of the platform that we are dealing with, the narrative in these top universities are the same. That big idea remains the same. So if you understand this, everything else within the admission process becomes a little bit more simpler. So to understand this, try to picture this. When an admission officer is opening your application, they're really not asking, is this student perfect? They're asking, does this student make sense? And do we want them on our campus? As a matter of fact, you can go onto YouTube, you can see a lot of videos about admission officers really discussing different resumes, different profiles, and doing it on a round table kind of a situation and largely asking this kind of question. Does it make sense? Does the student fit in? So the admission or readers usually look for four things. With that first thing that you're seeing is a consistent story across your academics, across activities and essays. So in simple words, does the application feel it belongs to one person with one direction? Or does it feel like a bunch of disconnected pieces, bunch of random activities selected? So top applicants don't look random. Their courses, their activities, and all of their writings are pointed towards that same identity that they're trying to create. So it's almost like saying, this is what I'm interested in. This is how I have pursued it, and this is where I want to take it next. And consistency doesn't mean that you can't have multiple interests, by the way. So it's not just saying one activity consistently. It means to say having consistent participation in multiple activities. It just means that the reader shouldn't feel confused. They should be able to summarize you in one clean sentence after reading all of your files. different activities, but still being threaded, by that same thread. I think that would be the right way to put it across. Now, anyways, moving on to the second point, which is the evidence of growth, skills, responsibility, leadership. So admission officers really love to see progression. So it's not about just saying that I joined a club, but it's really talking about I started learning, I got at it better, I took an initiative, I led, I created impact. They're looking for signs that are not static, that really talk about growth when you commit and you rise when those responsibilities increase. Because colleges, it's not about what you have already achieved. You're again applying as a school student. It's about whether you'll keep on going once they have admitted you. Now, the third aspect then comes across to a signal of contributions. What will students add to the campus? Now, this is that big one. A college isn't selecting the best individuals, right? They are getting the best applications. So within those applications, they're trying to build a community, right? Future classmates, leaders, researchers, creators, performers, athletes, volunteers. So the reader's asking, if we admit you, what do we gain? Will you contribute in terms of clubs, in terms of labs, student life, community impact, classroom discussions? So, top applications show contributions through proof. They are already building things. They're trying to lead teams. They have helped people. They have come across in trying to solve real problems, creating communities somewhere or somehow. So, the reader can confidently believe this student won't just come and consume opportunities or just learn from here, but they will be here to create value and, very importantly, contribute. That importance of that, again, word, signals of contribution. Now, lastly, fourth, fit. Does the student have real reason to choose the school, and can they explain it? So fit is not I love your campus, or you're really ranked highly, or I just like your research. Fit is really why this program that I want to select at your institute, why this specific environment of your institute, why these opportunities in terms of, let's say, the research opportunities, the internship opportunities, and how it connects to your goals. So top applicants can explain it in a way that it feels very personal, very specific. They make it obvious that they aren't just randomly picking colleges just basis looking in their SAT scores, looking at those minimal CDS documents. They are choosing it because it matches the direction that they want to be on. And here's the real hidden truth. Fit also protects you because the goal is not just to get in, it's also get into the place where you'll end up thriving. So it's not a place where you're going to feel extremely disconnected, disjoint, and only being there just because your grades are matching. So the line at the bottom, and the key takeaway would be and which I want all of you to remember. If your application feels like one person wrote it across every section, so you're quite ahead. Now, moving across from what largely they're looking at, let's also see it from the admission officer's lens. What are they looking at very specifically? That one of those first questions that I'd say, an admission officer is going to be asking you, like, who are you? So this is about your values, your curiosity, the character, and what you really do care about. So they're trying to understand what motivates you when no one is really forcing you. What topics do naturally you want to go deep into? What kind of teammate or classmate will you be able to become? What do you really stand for? So, this shows up most strongly in your essays, but also in the choices you make, what you pursue, and what you really commit to, and what you keep on doing when it really gets hard. And also at this one very point, what kind of teammate or classmate you will be. Harvard actually even has an essay very specifically on this, which they had asked that if you're accepted at Harvard, what are the top three things your roommate should know about you? So they're always wanting to know how are you going to be fitting in, who are you as a fit into their system. Secondly, how do you spend your time? So, this is the admissions code language for saying what are your priorities? Because time is the most and honest idea that you could, and data that you could put across. So, anyone can say that I'm passionate, right? But admission officers would want to look how your weekly or hours actually look. So, are you going deep or you just collecting, activities along the way? Do you take initiative or only do what is assigned to you? Or do you really like to lead, build, compete, serve, or do you just like to follow? Is there evidence of impact? Something changed because you actually showed up. So this is what top applications within win with their depth. So if even if they have fewer activities, for example, they show progression, they show more skills, they show more responsibility, they show more leadership, and eventually more results. Now, lastly, which is why here and how will you be really contributing? So admission officers really want to know why this school specifically, why are you, looking at that institute, and very much specifically beyond rankings, beyond repute. Why this program, why this environment, this overall community, and what will you actually add once you arrive? Because a college is not just selecting, as I've said repeatedly, the best students, they're selecting the best mix of students, the one who will strengthen the classrooms, the clubs, the labs, the athletics, the student communities, and overall that campus culture. So, top applications and applicants make this really easy for the reader. They show, here's what I have contributed so far, here's what I want to do next, and here's why your campus is a perfect place or fit for me. Now, what we have done so far, we have tried to first see what is the narrative of US applications, what is that differentiating factor, which led us to the pillars on common application, various platforms, what are the things that you need to create in the application. Then we saw from the admission officer's side, where is he putting maximum weightage on? We then moved across and did two specific slides in terms of what is the big idea that we're trying to create here and what are the admission officers or readers really looking out for. So now we move on to the actual aspect of today, which is, the five pillars. So what are those specific things that we're looking at? So we'll just firstly go across all five of them and, just introduce them all. And we will then move in slide by slide, discussing each and single every pillar before we move on to, the parents' contribution and those common mistakes. So first coming up is the strategy. So this is your college list, this is your positioning. Strategy is not just a list of colleges, or I like this colleges, or here it has a good ranking. And when you create the college list at this level, it's not saying that this is my final list of applications, right? This is the overall list or the overall pool that I'm creating where my eventual list would be coming out from. So top application build lists that are really balanced, they're intentional, they are with this goal that eventually what you need to do is create that final application list that goes across to those three pools of saying, these are my dream colleges where I have to put my maximum attempt to get through. These are my target colleges, which are just beyond that realistic scope. We just need to reach out a bit, but still within that realism scope. And then eventually you do also have the safety colleges, which are of the right kind of caliber, the right quality, and at the same time are a easy approach for you, where overall, once you're done with your application, you're assured of of an accepted application. So your ideas while creating the list should encourage or your movement towards that position. Now, eventually, the positioning is the big one. You really need to be crystal clear on what is my angle, what am I really known for, what is the story that you should be remembered for after reading the file. Secondly comes in your academic. So this is your rigor, this is your grades, the testing choices. Colleges don't evaluate grades in isolation. They really ask, did this student challenge themselves relative to what was available at their school and in that overall context? Top applicants think like, are my subjects aligned to my intended direction? Am I taking the most rigor pathway that I can handle well? Am I showing improvement and consistently? Am I also showing breadth of interest and not rather just one, I guess, say one trick pony in that way? So it's also the depth that you don't want to show across with your overall subject selections. I'm not just saying your school selections, your courses, your APs. With all of that, again, that letter T is that thing that comes across, that well lopsided aspect, that there are those specific intended direction, and then there is also the participatory interest. Now, the same thing you need to think that letter T when we move on to our third pillar, the activities. So this is the pillar where top applicants stand out the most. And again, They show depth, they show leadership, they show impact, they show breadth. So a student who, a lot of students really think that activities is really about a lot of different quantity, 8, 10 lines on the common applications. Top applicants really treat these activities like a portfolio. They focus on things that really show, as I was saying, depth, which is a long-term commitment. It's a skill building activity. It should be increasing in responsibility. It should be showing a huge time commitment. Along with that depth, and that winnings that you would be showing, that vertical stroke, again, that letter T, that well lopsided profile, you're also showing the breadth, right? We're also showing participation in various different areas. But in both of these, in depth and breadth, the most important thing is still the impact, something measurable or meaningful that has changed because of those activities. And lastly, leadership, not just being in the club, not just being part of a research, but really taking it from the front. And importantly, top applications connect activities to purpose. So even if they're, there to explore multiple interests, they're there to see various different activities, but their profile still feels very coherent, not just random. Now, the fourth pillar in this whole, I would say, house structure in a way, is your essays. So this is that reflection, this is that fit. So essays are not just a resume in a paragraph, they are the chance to show your thinking, your values, your personality. So top applications do two things really well. It's that reflection part. So they don't just describe what has happened, they explain what it meant, they show growth, they show self-awareness, and they show maturity. Secondly, it's the fit part. They show why college makes sense for them and why they make sense for the college. Not just generic praise, but specific alignment. When you're talking in terms of specific opportunities connected to your abilities, to a specific goal in your mind, and that overall mindset that you're trying to put across. So have those kind of thought when you're looking across at your essays. Now, lastly, pillar, the validation. So this is your recommendations and the interviews. So this pillar is really what others are confirming your story. So top applicants don't treat recommendations as a formality. They invest in a relationship with teachers, with mentors, with counselors over time, so that the recommendation becomes detailed, personal, and largely evidence based. So a strong recommendation is not the student is hardworking or does well or fits well. It's really saying here's what the student did in the class, in the overall, I would say, ecosystem of the school. This is how they think, this is how they contribute, this is how they lead, and this is really how they respond to feedback and challenge, and very importantly, setback. So these are those various aspects in terms of the recommendations, interviews, top applications. Again, treat them with a conversation of intention. They prepare stories, they have examples at ready hand, they have the reflections ready. So, and it's also not, I'm trying to put across that you're going to memorize your answers. You want to just show clarity, curiosity, and that authenticity while you're speaking. So when, even when an interview, let's suppose, is informal, they still would know the part of a validation layer. So now zooming out, the slide basically says that the top applications win because they don't just rely on one pillar to carry them, but they're looking across at that as a holistic approach. Now, where we have built across with the presentation so far, so now you would be able to understand what are the components of the applications, what are the weightages, how's the admission officer looking across at it, and how are those components converting into pillars of applications by the current screen. Now we will go into those individual pillars themselves. So the foundation, and I would say the strategy, this one first pillar is largely the foundation pillar. If I would not have put these in terms of the sequence that we are following, I largely call the strategy pillar the central one. It's the one that is carrying the whole weight of the application. So even before your grades, the activities, the essays, we need two things: a smart college list, a clear positioning, and three things, sorry, and a very clear strategy. So now moving into that first thing, what are your top students doing very differently when it comes across to the strategy part? So top applicants build a very intentional college list. So which is not largely just based on ranking, but it's based on fit, it's based on your strategy. So they start by checking academic fit. Definitely, you want to see the program strength, you want to see the curriculum, you want to see the faculty focus, you want to understand the research and internship pathways, you want to understand the school size, the classroom size, and from there you're also thinking about the social fit, right? The campus culture, the location, the community vibe, the student life, right? Eventually, this one I would call that parent-legged aspect, the financial fit, the cost, the aid policies, right? Are you test blind? Are you need blind? Are you need aware? So affordability over those 4 years is also that one very important fact that you'd be looking across at. You also do go across in various different aspects of looking at colleges, even from the perspective of very specific things as demographics, right? You want to see what class size are you getting into, right? That also pushes you towards LAC, which we call liberal art colleges. Again, not so much research oriented, very much specific on your school life as an undergraduate. So these are those various things that you should be looking across rather than just stopping at saying that this is the rank. You should see the program strength, curriculum, faculty focus, and all of those various aspects that I was talking about. So these students, they also make smart testing choices, by the way, early, which is to submit that SAT ACT score, at the midpoint or at the start of your 11th year. So what score range they're really aiming for, and how and what that decision and how that really comes across really would change that list at the end. Because a test optional doesn't mean that it is test irrelevant everywhere, especially for competitive majors and scholarships. So while you're deciding your SAT aspect and looking also at the college list, that whole part should be there. If you even have one test optional, one test mandatory, you would need to give this exam. So the big difference is clarity. Top applicants have the why for every school, and they match their strengths to what the school actually values. So the application feels very much aligned, it feels very much coherent, and it feels credible. The 10-minute exercise, right? So this is the last one part that I want to put across in terms of strategy. So try to write down your five strongest traits. Try to write down your five strongest academic interests you're genuinely excited for. And it's not just what sounds impressive. And also put top five activities that you would want to be known for, the ones that really show depth, they show initiative, leadership, they want to show breadth, and all of these things coming together should show impact. And another line that I would be putting across in terms, even crossing your academics, is your SAT plan. So, your current score, your diagnostic target range, whether, and whether you plan to submit it or not, all of those things need to be part of this quick exercise. So now, do you now do one smart search? Look for schools where these signals are rewarded. How do you look for these schools? You look at the serious document per institute. You look at the programs, the clubs, the labs, the entrepreneurship. You look at those data as well, in which, is the 75th percentile, the 50th, the 25th percentile of the SAT score. So you'd have a very clear understanding of what kind of strategy would you need to create around the profile that you already have, running across with you. So once the strategy is in place, you move across to pillar number two, which is then looking at your academics and your testing. Because at the end of the day, this is the first testing point that an admission officer goes through. He would be firstly looking at your academics. So the strongest proof of readiness in the application is this first pillar, is the second pillar. Here we focus on your grades. We focus on course rigor, the test strategy. So your SAT, your ACT, your AP choices, your subject choices, to show you not just, specific performance, but you want to show challenge, you want to show consistency, and very importantly, a trajectory. So the goal is simple: make it obvious that the student can handle academic demands of the colleges on the list. Now, what are they very specifically doing in those two parts that I have created for the second pillar of academics and testing? You've got your school academic decisions, you also have got your testing decisions. So, first up, the school subject selection or the rigor. So, top applications don't just pick what feels the easiest per se. They first ask what subjects will best support my intended direction. So, if you're a student who's really targeting something, let's say like a STEM, computer science, so your rigor should be in mathematics and all of those sciences subjects. If you're targeting, let's say, majors as economics, business, social sciences, so again, maths, English, and relevant other, subjects would really matter. If you're targeting completely humanities, so writing heavy subjects, strong language performances would really matter. Now, with all of these subjects, once you have selected, I'm sorry to say, the ones that would really showcase the minimum requirement for your selections of those various electives. The next set of subjects, if let's suppose if you're an IB, you've done your language selections, you've picked up your HLs that are intended for your major, and if you've got this choice of, let's say, one or two SLs that you need to pick up, for those last two SLs, my one point would be select your strongest performances, right? Select those subjects if you're an IB that you'd be getting close to those sevens and sixes. So do see your subject selections doing two purpose, that they're putting up challenging choices. For example, to say the choices that are required to get through with that elective. For example, you want to do computer science, have maths and science. Beyond that, the second thing that you want to add up in your thought process is the strong performance. So, that's the whole thing. Top applications aren't just looking at the major driven aspect, they're looking across at a complete growth story. So, admission officers would then be looking at not just your predictive grades. Obviously, that's also based on your ninth and grade result themselves, but the admission officers would look at the grade 9s through to grade 11s very specifically. They're asking themselves this very specific question: is this student consistent? Isn't it just like let's say a blip of grade 10? Or is it that they are improving overall? Are they able to handle the challenges better over time? So that's why a upward trend is often better rather than just showing that one perfect year, which at sometimes I do see a lot of times in Indian applications where we end up giving a lot more importance just to grade 10. So rather than having that one spike, you could have a lower average growth, I mean, a lower average score, but if it shows growth, you're on the right side. Lastly, it's your English proficiency that's very specific in terms of being board dependent. If you're on any of the domestic boards, so your strategy should be make sure that you've got your IELTS and TOEFLs looked across. So again, in terms of your school academics, you need to make sure that you're doing two aspects. You've got your major slash challenging choices, along with those subjects where you need to put a strong performance. Again, if you're in CBSE, you have, for example, going for computer science, you've picked up your PCM, you've picked up English. The fifth subject is the strong performance subject. The same thought process you could also look across in A-level kids. Once you've picked up your major subjects, completing you for your majors, pick up the strong performance subject. Moving across, all grades 9th till 11th are important. English proficiency if you're in a domestic board. Now, the other thing that, and I would say that a top applicant would do differently in terms of academics, is taking the SAT and ACT decision in the right way. So now let's really talk about the testing strategy. So top applicants really treat SAT and ACT like a project plan and not a panic plan and not the only plan. First, they align prep with the right time window. So typically, I would say grade 10 is the right time for making sure that your foundations are up at the right level, your maths and English skills. So once you're in grade 11, giving that test becomes much so smoother. And very specifically, I have said maths and English, even while speaking about ACT, because the section that we talk in terms of ACT of being science, it is actually an English comprehension, the topic being science. So the skills that you're really working on, regardless of the paper that you'd be giving, is within grade 10 mathematics and English. You need to go across, look into go on to college board, see the various topic selections, make sure that you're doing well with them. So students that are consistently joining us across different sessions, you would have seen me take a very specific session on maths and English, and we really discuss what are the different topics. So make sure that you know all of these in really advance. During grade 10, you're covering them up in the right way. So you're getting ready in that right sense for your SAT that you'd be taking across in grade 10. Now, secondly, they aim for fewer and really high quality attempts. So that's a very important things for SAT. So don't try to just keep on giving attempts and end up giving 4 or 5 attempts. Largely 2 to 3 serious attempts is all that it takes. Remember, you do get a super score. So they will be taking the best of your English, the best of your maths, and putting it together for that one single super score. Now, moving across, third, try to take that diagnostic as early within your grade 10. So, your grade 10 syllabus doesn't really end at after your exams. They do end somewhere around December, January of your grade 10 years. As soon as that your maths and English is completed, make sure that you have taken that diagnostic. So you know a very clear plan. When should you start preparing? When would that first SAT attempt come? Can you take one also as early as August, September of your grade 11th year, at the start of your grade 11th year, or something late of November and December? And the latest that you should be going in terms of your SAT attempts should be March of your application year. So the year that your 12th is starting, that year of March should be the last attempt. So the best way to create this time plan, definitely wait till your 10th, strengthen your core pillars, do a diagnostic test, and the time frame that I've said, look across at it for completing your for doing your SAT. And do remember, one of the most important things in terms of SAT, practice is key. Maximize your mock attempts before giving your exam, and always try to do the exam in the same time of the day that you'll be actually giving your actual exam. So your exam should just feel almost like, as we say in our mentoring circles, just like the 21st SAT mock. So it shouldn't feel as a very different activity in that sense. Now, moving on from the second pillar, we're moving to the third pillar, which is of activities and leadership. So this is the part of the application that should show the student, that should show who the student is outside that classroom, outside the school. So there are various different activities that I'd even spoken across during the last couple of slides, that there are academic activities, the non-academic activities, and I said that I'll be clearing up in the future slides what are academic activities, what are non-academic activities. So let's firstly start in terms of academic activities. Academic clubs, it's one of those first things that I'd put across. These are maths clubs, the science clubs, economic forums, various academic things that you're doing beyond your classroom work. These are not mandatory activities in that academic sense of grade 12 scores or results from 9 till 11 or your SAT score. These are largely activities, as I've even said before, where the admission officer is looking you at this lens of saying, do you go and select things when it is not mandatory? So see, that is that first aspect coming through with those academic clubs. And it's that same consistent nature when you look into your research or other various projects. So any independent research, any mentorship programs, any participation in terms of science fair is the same kind of ideation that you're trying to put across, that you've gone ahead, selected an activity beyond, as I would like to say, the call of duty. Moving on to the third part, internship. So at any startup, one of the best ways to create those internships, uh, I normally say that there are two internships that are largely there for high school students. One, where the parent is buying it. Two, where the parent is trying to create it with the relationship that the parent may hold with any of the startups, and dependent on the area that the student wants to do it. I prefer the later. One, for that specific reason that the later kind of internships are quite individualistic. The first ones where they are bought, they are not just going to be bought by you individually. So you're not going to be the only one doing that same kind of internship. So a really individualistic internship, in my personal opinion, is through those family connects. Do also remember, you're a student in ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th. You cannot be getting an internship with Ferrari, BMW, or Honda, in which these organizations have purely selected you from a perspective that you will go and contribute to their organization, and then they will be selecting you for a, let's say, a longer term employment scale. The whole idea is that you are just going there to learn. So the best way, look at specific courses, which is that fourth point. Do those courses, increase your knowledge. Those online certifications are good, but use those knowledge areas then eventually to create that internship, then to create that research and participate in that academic club as well. So you can see I'm trying to thread a needle, right across all of these four different activities in terms of why did you do those courses, how have they connected to internship, how did that grow up to a research or a project or a competition or even a summer program participation, and also how have you put those practical usage of your knowledges in academic clubs as well. So it's not only just about courses in terms of theoretical knowledge, it is important, but also how have you practically used the knowledge in across all of those various activities. So while creating those 10 or 20 activities, you can use academic activities as well, right? For those couple of headings, summer programs is another one that you could put across, which is part of that courses that you could see as point number four. Now, beyond your academic activities, and which is that, differentiating factor about your US applications, that, you've got academic activities and you also do have your non-academic activities, where your non-academic activities are equally important, of the same value as the first five that are four or five that I was talking across on. So if you look in these terms, anything that you do for community service, all of those various examples, creative arts, performance art, sports, moving across to public speaking, passion projects, competitions, all of these various activities can be used to, create an idea of your overall application, your personality. And do remember, you can use your academic activities and your personal activities in the same way, with the same weightage, to create those 10, 20 activities right from Common App to UCs, or let's even say those four most important activities when it comes across to MIT. Now, moving across to these, four very important aspects, right? That how do you really create and what do you really think across when you are thinking of these activities? So these four things again are really very much important. What is the depth that you're thinking across on? Now, how is this depth really being communicated? So when you look into your common application, they will ask you that how many hours a week do you do it, how many weeks a year do you do it, is where you start to show the time commitment. Along with that, the continuity commitment comes across. So basically, if I'd say the y-axis being that first part, hours a week do you do it, weeks a year do you do it, and the x-axis is really then created when you also put across that I've been doing this activity since grade 9, 10th, 11th, and 12th. The more ninth, 10th, and 11th that you have rather than just 11th and 12th, the more depth of activities that you're showing. And with all of that, one aspect, do also remember, it is not just creating a list of winning activities. Even if you can't show a winning, even if you can't show a certification, but that activity can show a personality impact. It can be impactful. It could show initiative. It could show leadership. It is still an activity that you should be thinking across on, because those are those three other most important things: the impact, what has been the result by the activity that you have done. If you've done something in an NGO, how did that really impact real people's life? What initiative did you take? What leadership did you take across all of your academic and non-academic activities? So overall, how do you write? You have to write like, I would say, a top applicant. So the formula is, try to think of an action verb, what you did, how you did it, and what was the result. So instead of saying, I was part of a debate club, you should write, led weekly debate prep, coached novices, developed a case brief, helped team with top three at an international school event, those kind of sentences. Now, another example, let's say why 150 characters, why it really works. So the sample here is excellent because it really excludes all of those key ingredients. So built is a strong verb, designed modules is a strong of how, trained for 12 tutors, improved pass rates for 80 students, which is then again the resultant scale. So all of these various things are important, where you've shown the ownership and leadership through those 12 tutors, you've shown the how, and you've also shown a very strong verb in terms of build. Lastly, looking at various checklists, so numbers when possible, try to add the scale, time, reach, frequency. So 2 hours a week, raised a specific amount, mentored a specific number of students, published a specific amount of articles, let's say built an application with a specific amount of users. So numbers are where your activity really starts to become more real and not just vague. Evidence of ownership is again very important. So admission officers really love the idea. Did you thrive or did you just join in? So words like initiated, launched, founded, led, organized, managed, those are the ones that you need to use. Try to use specific verbs. Try to also use a lot of fluff words as well. Now, these are the overall key takeaways with the pillar three. Now, moving a little bit on a faster pace because I think we're going over our time frame. I'll try to sum up the next two pillars in terms of the essays, but I will need to spend a due time in the personal statement and the common application before we move on to the fifth pillar itself. Now, at the heart of your common application, let's focus on the personal statement. This is the 650 word essay that is submitted to all of your colleges. You apply through the common application, and this is what makes it special. It has the purpose. This is the essay that serves as an opportunity for you to tell your story. It's not just about listing your achievement, it's about really showcasing your personality, your character, the growth story. This is your chance to explain why behind the experiences that you may just have shown as a couple of capstones. Now, beyond that, what admission officers really want, admission officers, really want to see you as the person you are. They're looking for authentic stories. They're looking for reflection. They're looking for growth. They're looking for insight. They want to understand your values, your motivations, and how you contribute to the overall, community. Now, moving on to what it's really not, that not resume, not report. What it's not, it's really important to remember that the personality statement is not a resume. It's not about listing your achievements or just extracurricular activities. Rather, it's an essay where you would explore one aspect of your life in depth, focusing on how it has influenced your overall perspectives with ambition. So, this is where you can show that you're more than just your GPA, more than just your test score. So, as I would just conclude the last point on the screen, that you say a powerful tool that shows who you think and what really matters to you a lot, which should demonstrate your values, the personality growth, and perspectives. Right now, just moving across that, what signals really land well and what is drafting or workflow should look like. So reflection, what has really changed in me. A strong essay isn't just what has happened, it's really what you have learned and how you have changed. Think across in terms of agencies. What choices have you made? What problems have you solved? What tools have you really used? Readers want to see you as an active driver, not a passive character. Be specific, so avoid vague statements. One real moment with detail is really more powerful than big general claims one after the other. Thirdly, growth, skills, mindset, and maturity over the right time. Show progression, where you've started, what has really shifted, and what you can do and see differently. Now, moving on to the drafting workflow, pick one to two themes. Don't, go ahead and just pick up eight themes. Have a proper brain dump from your overall activities while doing so. Eventually try to write, let's say, initially a messy overall aspect, putting everything into a bank and then tightening it around with a structure. Eventually try to get feedback for clarity and not just for polish. Try to understand from the perspective and ask the person, do you understand the story that I was trying to say? Not just ask, are the words beautiful, or are the words really, unique in that sense? Always try to understand in feedback, did they understand what you were trying to communicate? Now, in terms of a quick format, Common App, 650 words. I'm not going to go into much of those details. You guys can have a quick look while I'm just describing. You see, they've got PIQs, which are personal questions, personal interest questions. You're required to give four responses from a selection of eight. Each is capped across to 350 words. In terms of UTs, you have an SAA, which is normally 500 to 700 words, which is more narrative in style. MIT would have approximately five responses, each having 100 and 250 words, direct and more topic specific. So all of those things that I was just really talking about, the personal statement, they still remain the same. This is just how all of those various platforms will be changing dependent on your list of colleges that you're applying. And here again, why is it so important to be very sure of those list of colleges? Now, moving across to your supplementary essays. So you need to understand the first thing, the program that you're applying for. So really start by saying that why do you want to study this and how will you come across and be really building onto this area. The second thing is the people, then show who you want to learn with and learn from. So this could be, let's say, faculty, research mentors, student groups, communities, alumni networks. Thirdly, it is the place. So finally show how does the environment really matter to you. So this may include thinking of campus, culture, thinking across with traditional values, city location, and opportunities. The bottom line, banner is then, avoid your generic phrases, aim for specific reasons and specific actions that would rather take you there. Now, moving across to the fifth pillar itself, which is looking at the validation, which is the last pillar in this overall application and the last segment of the main aspect of our presentation today, the recommendations and the interviews. So a strong recommendation is not just picking up the most senior teacher, the most senior person, let's say in an internship or a summer application possibility. It's about picking the teacher or a person who can say with real evidence that I have seen the student grow and here what really makes them stand out. Here is the personality, and here is what really defines them. So choose the teachers who saw you over a long period. Top applicants choose recommenders who really taught them recently and have seen them consistently. They've seen their effort, curiosity, leadership, and can really speak character in classroom setting. They're the same teachers in which you have built a very strong and steady relationship over time. So even before you're asked to submit a brag sheet, which you should definitely submit, your own relationship should be in a way that they understand at least 3 to 4 specific class moments. They should know 2 to 3 key strengths that you're talking about. They may should also speak about, let's say, 3 to 4 extracurricular moments that you should know about. 1 to different activities that really connect to your overall direction. So these kind of activities would really strengthen you in terms of your letters of recommendations. And then now moving on to your interviews, right? So prepare as 3 stories, at least 3 to 5 stories. So top applicants normally walk in with 3 to 5 ready stories, where largely, let's say, picking up one of them would be a challenge that you would have faced, a leadership initiative moment that or something that you drove, a curiosity story, a story that really goes on to define a depth aspect behind you, a story that really shows you in terms of an impactful person. So try to think on these 3, 4, 5 options that I have given you and create stories before you go in. Know why the major you are studying if you're declaring. If you're not declaring, you should know the story that why are you then going through that specific route. Practice all of this in very specific and concise kind of questions, and also do have a lot of thoughtful questions ready at hand. So interviews is not just about answering question, is also about answer questioning smart ones, because normally what is seen, the answers are not the best way to judge someone's intelligence or knowledge. It's the way they question. So make sure that you also have looked across that in that right way. So for this, for the like of time, we'll just skip over this couple of slides. We'll just now move across to that parent role. So this slide is all about the parent role in this. And the simplest way to frame it, you have to be the structure of this activity. You have to be the consultant. You don't have to be the driver or the captain. Your job is to really create an environment where the student can take ownership and perform consistently without burning out. So the do's that I would say on the parent side is, often ask reflective questions as, what did you learn? Why, what would you do differently next time looking at the result? What's the next small step that you would like to take? They help to really set up the practical systems. They help to set up then those weekly calendars, those deadline tracking, the study blocks, and the review cycles. So, the student isn't really just relying on the last minute pressure or perspective. And importantly, they are celebrating the progress, they're enjoying the progress as well, and are not only just becoming outcome driven on scores or just the results, but are being in the moment, experiencing it in the right way. So once they reflect on those personal statement and essays that I've just spoken across on, is done in the right way. And in terms of the don't side, the biggest pitfalls are always, rewriting activities or aspects in your voice, overloading the schedule, right? Just for a specific college, changing the narrative just because you want to apply to a certain institute. Find the narrative first, then look at the university. So the best support you can give is a very clear is very clear. Try to provide structure, encourage independence, protect well-being, which is basically that sleep, the stress, the balance, and be the calm sounding board. Don't be the author, don't be the manager, don't be the leader, be the driver in this. So it's not about the pressure engine. It is that subtle, tap on the shoulder, being there with the student that would really make that difference. Right. Some common mistakes to really avoid, don't try to do everything. It will, end up making you look like that you have mastered nothing. Next, your activities without don't have those activities where there's no outcome or impact. If an activity reads like I just participated, it won't stand out. The best description show what you did and how you did it. Then we have an inconsistent story across the sections. Do not do this. If your academics point to one direction, your activities point to another, your essays just sound like a third person. Readers would feel extremely confused. Now, another big one is generic supplements. I love your campus, amazing professors type of statements. Supplementaries needs very specific. Know the programs, know the people, know the place, and importantly, what you are planning to do there. On the right side of the list that you're seeing, essays then get too over edited until the student's actual voice just disappears. So when an essay sounds too polished, too adult, too un-high school like student like, sounds like an adult, it actually becomes extremely weak. The best essays sound raw, they sound natural, they sound specific, and that feedback that I told you to take from others, not how well polished can this essay become. Did you understand what I was trying to communicate? Is what I thought. So this is one thing that I also do put across with the communication of the essays. Think it this way. What I thought is what I wrote. What I wrote is what the admission officer read. What he read is what he thought. When my thought and the admissions officer thought becomes the same, the communication is crisp. That is the kind of ideology that you need to be thinking across when you're writing across all of these various other documents. So that's the part that you also think in terms of these essays. Another common issue is late recommenders, weak teachers context. Great letters don't happen when you ask at the last minute. They happen when you start early, when you choose the teachers that show growth, you consistently feed them the right kind of information, groom the right kind of relationship, you get the right kind of letter of recommendation. And most importantly, moving across, ignoring the right kind of school fit, selecting colleges just basically on the rank. Lastly, the last minute submission errors and missed deadlines. You start the process too late, you miss, having the right kind of SAT score at the right time, and then, you may not be able to apply to the right kind of list of colleges. Now, just closing across the presentation today with our approach. So whenever we start working with a kid, let's say in grade 9th or 10th, we always start by firstly understanding the profile, understanding that candidacy. We then move across to, building the student profile, helping with them with their initial personal statement work. Within grade 11, helping them with the subject selection, capstone work, standardized testing. Within grade 12, we'll help you close the personal statement, close the essays, closure of activities, submission of applications, and all the way up till the visa support. To just put up all the activities into different pillars, the academic test prep, we do give mentoring in terms of SAT and PSAT and AP. You guys would remember at the heart of our organization, we are more of a mentorship, and then we do bring in the profile building and the admission prep through our storytelling aspects as well. Now, a quick a quick look at our success stories. Another very good rounded student performing well at SAT, competed within essay competition, participation within sports, NGO, music participation as well, charity events, and a strong, which builds up a strong profile with the good list of impactful accomplishment that got the student through with Dartmouth. Another example of a kid being admitted to Rice University. Now, the last part of our presentation, the resources. So every weekend we do a different presentation covering different topics within the admits within the realms of admissions. So tomorrow on 11th, which is the 11th, you could, join into a session which is looking into a very specific topic again within admissions, which is to say how top scorers get 800 in SAT, reading and writing section. Next weekend, Saturday, you could join us across on on a session looking at essential strategies to ace the AP exam. How do you get a 5 out of 5 in your APs would be largely the topic that we'd be handling. Now, beyond that, you could also use the QR code at the bottom of your screen and get access to all of these newsletters. And you could also use these two QR codes to access our other two platforms, the podcast through YouTube and the WhatsApp group through this second QR code. Moving across to the SAT diagnostic, that's one resource that we do put across for all students freely. If you want to get a quick SAT diagnostic, understand your current status, use the QR code and we will get back to you with your complete report. Lastly, if you want to get a complete understanding over your position, over admissions, and how you could take this thing forward, you could use the QR code on the screen now. And now this is really the last slide of our presentation. Thanks a lot for everyone who has stuck through even 15 minutes above our time. Thank you for the patience. Now I just open up the floor for questions. I'll just be using the chat section to look into those different activity questions. So 10 different activities or same category can be repeated, definitely can be repeated. Within UC, you have four categories to put 220 activities. So it is going to be the same, can be the same category. Within common application, it is very common, I mean, using the same term, but yeah, very common that you can showcase two, three different internships. You can showcase two, three different research. It's not saying that you can only show one research, one internship. You can show numerous of the same activity. Does it matter if I take the SAT or ACT or the IELTS or the TOEFLs? Yes, it does matter, Neil, dependent on the university you're applying to. So if you're applying to a university of, let's say, Harvard, it is does matter. You need to take SAT. They're a SAT-aware college. If you're applying to UC California, University of California, Berkeley, then you do not need to take a SAT score. They are SAT blind, SAT or ECT for the matter. It really doesn't matter either or which. Beyond the IELTS or TOEFL, how does it matter? If you are on, let's say, CBSE or ICSE or any of the states board, you need to take an English proficiency test. If you are on IB or A levels, then you don't need to take the IELTS or TOEFL exam. Right. These are the two questions that I can see on the screen. If there are no further questions, then I would conclude the presentation for today. And thank you again, everyone, for listening out to the presentation. If you're wanting to take a much more personal understanding for all of the things that I've said, how does this connect to your own individual story? Just use the QR code on the screen. Connect with us. Either me or one of my other co-founders would connect with you with a one-on-one to give you a individual understanding of how your journey can look from this point onward. Which country for design courses? I mean, see, the point is not really saying design courses in which country. I would say your kid's profile, personality, and his requirements in which country. You can find good design colleges globally. If you still want to just say, okay, where's the highest probability of finding a top college? It's always USA. Along with USA, UK, and Singapore. But that's not just to say for design. It is largely for all majors put together. Right. Any other questions? I'm just waiting across for that. If there are no further questions, then we would conclude the presentation for today. Right. I don't think so. There are any other questions. So I'm just stopping the share and concluding across the presentation for today. Thank you, Kanishri, for helping with the presentation and hoping to see you guys again next week with the topic of AP, as I've said. And anyone who wants to join tomorrow's session, you could use the same registration link and join the SAT English session, how to get 800 over 800 for tomorrow. Thank you.